All right. Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully some people will trickle in. Thanks for coming tonight. Just a quick note, we have a new parking system that the owners of the building in Cicero have installed. So if you have any questions about that, if you didn't start the parking, we can help you with that, but you have to scan a QR code that we have. It's more QR codes. But you'll get reimbursed. So we have, what's the word I'm looking for? Validations, yep, for that. But if you have any questions, you can ask one of the WFRC staff members, and we'll make sure that we get those validations to you once the meeting is completed. All right. So then our agenda for tonight, we're going to be doing introductions as always, and then we'll do an overview of the regional transportation planning process. I'm going to give some highlights from our mapping exercise at our last meeting. And then we're going to have a breakout discussion on community outreach and public engagement. And then, as always, we'll have our open discussion and announcements, and then we'll adjourn for the evening. So starting with welcome and introductions, we have a new communications manager, John A. So I just included her photo for the folks online so you know what she looks like. If you want to introduce yourself really quickly, and then we'll start at that table, introduce all the folks in the room, and then we'll go to online.
I'm kicking us off. Is that my cue? Nice to meet everyone. Some of you are very familiar faces. I'm excited about this group and seeing how I can, uplift your guys' voices here in my role as communications manager. So please reach out to me with anything, of course, with your other staff contacts as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Riggle with the Disability Law Center. Nice to see everybody in person finally.
Hugh Van Wagen with the WFRC staff.
Shauna Meekum with MAG, Mountain Land Association of Governments.
Mike Christensen with the Utah Rail Passengers Association and also Salt Lake City's Planning Commission.
I'll just go to us. Lauren Victor, Transportation Planner for the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and also helping lead this Community Advisory Committee.
Seamus Guida, also on WFRC staff with Lauren on the Long Range Planning Team, and I'm the co-leader of the CAC.
Olivia Vaughn's UTA Strategic Planning.
Kendall Willardson, Transportation Planner with Mountain Land Association of Governments.
Julie Bjornstead, also a Transportation Planner at the Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Hey everyone, I'm Megan Waters, Community Engagement at UTA.
Bryton Pease, I'm a resident of Salt Lake City.
Sarah Cody, resident at Salt Lake City.
Jory Johnner, Wasatch Front Regional Council, Long Range Planning Group.
Jeremy Shinoda, Ogden resident, Ogden Planning Commission.
Rosie Hernandez, WFRC. Something super important, there is a sign-in sheet going around with a checklist of the gift card that you want to choose. Make sure you fill that out and also make sure you update your phone number information. And for those online, please send me your gift card of choice. Thank you.
Okay, and then we'll go to the online folks. Let's start with Stephen.
Hi, Stephen Richardson, Layton City resident, as well as Weber State University.
Wonderful, thanks. We'll go to Sandra.
Hey everyone, I'm Sandra, Salt Lake City resident, and I'm also here with OCA Utah and Wasatch Trail Collective.
Great, thanks. Tishelle?
Hi everyone, I'm Tishelle Wright. I am a Harriman City resident and here with Project Success Coalition.
Great, thanks. And then Carolyn? Okay, maybe we'll come back to you, Carolyn. Okay. Can you pull the transportation? Can you pull up the presentation? Okay. So then moving on to our next bit, I'm going to be giving an overview of the regional transportation plan and then some highlights from the mapping exercise. So the regional transportation plan, just as a reminder, is the transportation component of our region's vision and outlines the future road, transit, and active transportation investments over the next 20 to 30 years, while also considering existing and future land uses. So it's updated every 4 years. The projects included are limited to those that the region can afford, so it's fiscally constrained. And the plan conforms to air quality standards. So I mentioned that the plan is multimodal, covering roadways with projects including new construction, widening, operational, safety, and corridor preservation. Transit projects such as core bus routes, bus rapid transit, rail, and it even includes transit hubs, and active transportation, so people walking and biking. Projects that include grade separated crossings, protected bike paths, and new trails. So then I'm going to be touching on some highlights from the mapping exercise that we had this summer. And so it's not comprehensive. It's not every single comment. We received 59 comments in total on our roadway, active transportation, and transit maps. So when we did this exercise, we were looking at the base map of the 2023 plan, and we were keeping in mind to look ahead to the future for the 2027 plan. So that really kicked off our process for the 2027 regional transportation plan and gathering ideas from you to explore, look at any gaps that exist in the current systems. So starting off with transit, there was a comment about zero fare zones in all of the centers, which I thought that was a great idea. We currently have a zero fare in our downtown Salt Lake City Central Business District. So I've been talking with our modelers about what we might be able to do, if there's something we can look at and see what fare structures we can consider and model. There was also another comment to invest in transit-oriented communities. So we have our station area planning program that's looking at certifications for all the cities that have fixed guideways. So that's those BRT, bus rapid transit, and light rail stations in their cities. They've come up with station area plans. There was also a comment, bus from Brigham City to Logan, and that was something interesting. You know, there are buses, but they're not as frequent, and they cost a lot of money. So that's something that we'll talk with our partners and explore. So that was a great comment. And then another comment was faster travel speeds for the bus, and that is something we are actively looking at. We're looking at 10-minute frequencies for a bus, 15-minute frequencies. So we really do want those buses to be coming quicker more often, so you don't necessarily need to look at the schedule and things like that. You can just go to your stop and you know that a bus will be there soon. And then another comment we received is raising the transit system. So that's a big lift, literally, I guess. But it's something that we've considered. For example, in the TechLink project that we're looking at is the orange line. One of the alignments that we did look at was having a piece of that alignment raised. And so we looked at the possibilities, the feasibility, things like that. So it is something we are considering. There's a lot of pros and cons to each, but that is something we are looking at when applicable. So then looking at the roadway, Jay.
All right, so when we were looking at the roadway feedback, one of the comments was widening 12th Street in Ogden to reduce congestion. And we actually do have a project on our plan that goes from 1900 West to Wall Avenue, where there is going to be a widening there. And the current travel lanes are at 5, and the widening will take it to 7 lanes. Ramp metering. So the question here was, there was concern that basically what ramp metering will do, or what it's supposed to do, is it's supposed to allow more throughput and faster travel speeds and less congestion getting onto the highways and going, as you're getting on, basically it will be a little bit easier to zipper in and continue through, and it'll be adaptively measured through different types of computer systems. And the concern there was, will it be able to do the exact kind of amount, which was about like 20%, like increasing that throughput by around 20%. So there was a few studies that were done in Colorado and Australia that had shown numbers that were above that. So they were able to reduce the congestion, which increases air quality and allows for less time in the car, less vehicle delay, and faster travel speeds on there. And we will be doing, UDOT put in basically a request to do a study in the Salt Lake City area to try out this new method of ramp metering. And so we'll be able to see it in our area and see how it can affect I-15. East-west connections is another concern, and I think that's something that we, as WFRC and our other transportation partners, have been looking at quite extensively. And in the roadways portion right now, Jory Johnner, our long-range planning director, and I, and Julie Bjornstead have been actively looking at all the different highway systems that run north-south and where barriers are, as well as different types of canal systems or just other barriers that are basically preventing people from getting east to west or west to east. And so what we did is we looked at that, and we're highlighting areas where we think that could be, there could be changes that basically create more local connectivity that are different avenues also for regional connections. So I am not a part of Mountain Land Association of Governments, but I did speak with Kendall about basically there was a concern, or I guess a question, a comment on a causeway or bridges or ferry across Utah Lake. And I will, if you would like, Kendall, if you want to speak on that for a second on, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a project in our plan that kind of shows they'll get to a point where the congestion will be, it'll be difficult enough to travel from the west side of Utah County to the east side. It's currently a project that it's in our third phase, so quite a 10, 20 years from now, but we are starting a study, hopefully in the next couple years, to look at a lot of different solutions and alternatives, including having transit and active transportation solutions on there. Nothing is set in stone, including where the line is at and what it will look like. And yeah, something we'll definitely want to keep everybody here updated when we start doing more of that work in the future. So.
Awesome, thank you, Kendall. So one of the things that's important with stuff like that is when we'll send out emails that have different studies with public comment, that's what they want to hear, is that, you know, we don't want this or we support this type of item, type of comment. And another question and comment and concern was that prioritizing active transportation and transit over highway expansion. And I think there is a lot of concern, and it's very valid for that. And so what we have done is we've looked at different areas and been like, okay, if there's a new connection here, does it have to be a road, or could it be a pedestrian facility of some sort, whether that's biking or walking or both, and then looking at different areas where it could be paired with a pedestrian facility of the sort. And especially along I-15, there was a couple thousand comments on the EIS that went through, and a lot of those comments were focused on that. So if you look at the I-15 study from Farmington to Salt Lake City, they really took that into account and made a lot of pedestrian facilities. So just keep up that feedback, because that is really important.
Okay, moving on to active transportation, so people walking and biking. One of the comments that we heard was make North Union Canal Trail a thing. So that is something that the Mountain Land Association of Governments is looking at. There's some barriers to that trail. I don't know, Kendall, if you want to speak to some of those barriers, but it is being looked at.
I was going to say, Shauna, if you don't mind putting you on the spot, she's been
That's
working
in
on
my
this.
backyard. Not literally, but within throwing distance. Yes, so that's currently on Orem's plan, and as the state has looked more carefully at canal trails in general, we are seeing it being a possibility, especially if some of the property rights, the underlying property rights work out. Canals that are that old, often the division of land wasn't super careful when the canal went through, but it is possible, and it would connect a few regional trails. And there are probably more canals in your areas that could serve the same purpose. They're just hidden behind houses and neighborhoods. So keep an eye out.
That's great, thank you. So then the next one that we heard was improve mixed uses and increase density at Canyon Park Tech Center. So this was a great idea, and we're sharing these with our partners. So increasing mixed uses and the density is going to be helpful for people walking and biking, and making sure that we're designing so that everyone can kind of get around in these centers. The next one was accessible trails. So we're looking into providing resources for ensuring universal design for all users, make sure that everyone is able to utilize our trails and get around. And then one of the other things that we heard was a southern bikeway to Antelope Island. And this bikeway, Salt Lake County and the Audubon Society removed this project due to environmental impact concerns. So these were just highlights. Just want to reiterate, this is not all encompassing of some of the comments that we saw. As I mentioned, there was 59 that we received, and we're sharing those with our partners. So there were some things related to safety and lighting along corridors, and so we've shared that with the applicable transportation partner. So there's comments like that that we'll share out. But yeah, this was a great mapping exercise, really kicking off our regional transportation planning process, giving us items to think about and consider as we start the 2027 plan. Were there any comments, questions on that? Okay. So moving on. So here is our roadmap to 2027. So we're starting with aspirational brainstorming. So part of that was the mapping exercise that we had, hearing your ideas, looking into things that you mapped out. And so we're meeting with all of our communities along the region to kind of think and gather aspirational ideas and brainstorming. And then so moving into the winter and fall of next year, we're going to be creating a preferred scenario. So that's going to, after we take those aspirational ideas and we run them through technical analysis and have conversations with our partners, we'll kind of whittle down what we want to be in our preferred scenario. And then we'll be prioritizing projects. So the projects will be prioritized based on the Wasatch Choice Vision goals and expected available revenues. And then looking forward to May 2027 will be the final plan adoption. So that's our roadmap to the 2027 Regional Transportation Plan. And how some of your feedback is going to feed into that. So any questions about that process? Hearing that. Oh, yes, Jenny. Will you use a microphone, please? Thank you.
I thought I had a built-in mic. No, there's people online. I'm sorry, you might have said this, but literally what is the next step for this group? Like what's the next point of engagement for this group?
Our next meeting is in December. And so by that point, we will have wrapped up all of our workshops that we're having with our government, local elected leaders and city staff and things like that. And so we'll start preparing, start working towards our preferred scenario. So we'll come with more information on that and maybe how some of your feedback got woven into that. And so that will be our next touch point. Any other questions? Okay. So next we're going to be going into our breakout sessions. So we will have an online session for those folks online, but we're going to break out and we have facilitators that have some questions about community outreach and public engagement. So we'll spend, this is the meat of our meeting. So we'll spend probably the next 20 to 30 minutes or the natural progression of it. And then we'll come back together and kind of share what we discussed. So if you have any questions in the meantime, we'll be roaming around, but there's a facilitator at each table. So, and then there's a facilitator coming online for you folks. So we will go ahead and get started with that.
All right. Can everyone hear me?
Lauren, are
okay
you
that is
good with the
online?
current makeup of the tables here? Do you need anybody to join or separate?
All right. Give me just a second. Let me make sure that I'm muted in the other room really quick and I'll be right back. You guys can hear me, so that's good. So I'll be back in just a moment.
Right into our hearts. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, Washington. And on that good note, back to CBS Evening News. I'm Laura O'Donnell. See you right back here tomorrow. Good night.
Marilyn,
Yes.
do you want to come on camera and mute your TV for the activity?
I will.
Okay.
The nation made first look weather day as a powerful cold front will bring widespread rain and snow to the I-15 corridor. All that is from timeline and total electrical forecast. Coming up, multiple car accidents in southern Utah involving pedestrians. How does the police are responding?
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so Today we are doing basically what we're looking at is we're looking at outreach and community engagement, and kind of what that looks like for our CAC members and the best ways that we can get that information and the way to figure out how you guys want to receive that information, and give feedback and basically just to kind of refine that aspect of it, because that's something that we really want to focus on and that we think in certain ways can probably be improved, as everything can. So to kind of start it off, and you can feel free to speak at any moment, or if you have a question or anything at all, yeah, just feel free to stop me and we'll get started. So our first question is, how would you like to receive information from us? Do you guys like having the presentations that are in our workshop or in our meetings? Do you guys like having printouts of things? Is there ways that when we email you different opportunities for feedback or different presentations, that type of thing? Are surveys good that way from us? Is there a preference on what you do and what you don't like?
Would you care to give some examples that?
Yeah, so for instance, we'll go with presentation. So, you know, when we give, or a transportation partner comes in and gives a presentation, do you feel like that is a good way of getting information? And, you know, that's more of this is like us trying to get you guys the proper information so that you can be educated on things that are happening in our area of coverage and like the different areas across kind of this region of Utah. Or another instance would be when every once in a while we'll have, we usually always send a follow-up email after these meetings, but sometimes occasionally something will pop up where it will be, you know, X study was released and is on public comment period, and then we'll try and send that out to you guys so that if it's something that's applicable, that you guys get that. So those are kind of like some examples of different options that we have of giving you guys proper materials for education purposes. And yeah, just I guess basically what of those do you like that? Do you not like that? Are those items working? Or, you know, you could say, no, I don't like the presentations, or I do like the presentations. Yeah.
I think the presentations have been great, and the follow-up emails are really helpful, especially when it like links to the presentation and stuff. If it's not too much work for the partner, I think having like a 1-page handout or summary would be really helpful too, just to go over what was presented, big key items, any follow-up, like here's the link if you wanted to provide more info and like stuff like that. I think the emails have been great and they provide a lot of information, but it would be nice that maybe we could break it up a little bit more, like maybe at the very top or at the very bottom, do like a big like key takeaway, here's the link, submit your feedback by the state, this is from this person, this is for this, and like do a quick little summary before or after all of the information that follows, because there is a lot of information and a lot of good text, but sometimes it's hard to, at a quick glance, like understand what I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think that is something, even as somebody who does this every day, it is a lot, especially at this level, it is a lot of information. You know, like there's 600 road projects just in our area. There's, I think, like 700 active transportation projects and a couple hundred transit projects. And then that doesn't even cover the land use items. So that's really helpful. Yeah, go ahead.
So from what I've read on learning, the best way to make sure that information sticks is to make it bite-sized and to use as many different types of media as possible.
Okay, that's great.
So audio, visual, text, so on and so forth.
Fantastic. do you guys think in that regard that if there was, I know there's, Sandra, you had mentioned, some paper like coming with, like if we had printed, let's say, along with an email, in an email, if there was like a printed one pager that was handed out, that like each presenter handed out, that had kind of, just the big key takeaway things and perhaps like some deadlines, that would be like a good, a good add to each presentation. Yeah, okay. Because I think that's a good point of bringing up the multiple different types of media. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I also appreciate the presentations. I think hearing and seeing the information is nice and helpful because sometimes the information we've either received it in the newsletter that you all send, which is great, or separate emails, kind of like here's some information on what we will discuss, but being able to hear it and see it is nice. And it allows us to be able to like digest it and ask questions a little better in a presentation form than maybe in writing. But I like that idea of having maybe a handout that has the key points, key takeaways that you would like us to take from it, and also communicate to folks we work with who may not have the technical language to describe some of the complicated intricacies of what you all do, which is great. But we might have to kind of, there are sometimes there's not even a word for it in other languages, but having it kind of like broken down for us, we might be able to translate it better too.
That's actually a great point to bring up. And I don't know if that's something that we cover in here, but at least it isn't a question that I thought of. But do you guys feel like sometimes the presentation material is, I'm saying this for lack of a better term, but like not too advanced, but too advanced, and as in we're planners so that we see this every day, and as non-planners, no, you feel like it's like somewhat easy to digest, basically. Okay, so it's at like they're presenting at a good level. Okay, that's good to know.
And everyone had also been really great with when we ask questions to clarify stuff. And so I feel like if there is something we don't know, we are more than able to like ask a question and get it answered without feeling like dumb or something.
Yeah, but that was what I wanted to, I guess, make sure. I just didn't really know how to put that, because I think it, again, even doing this every day, some of the stuff that that I'll either have to explain or that gets explained to me can be really difficult to understand, and so yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was good. This isn't a question it's related to this, but it isn't on our list, but do you guys feel like there's been enough question time for each presentation? Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next question then, if there's no other comments there. So what feedback and exercise formats have you guys liked the most? So do you guys enjoy doing like the mapping exercises or surveys or questionnaires? Or obviously you guys do like the feedback opportunities via email. And I know we've done a couple different mapping exercises, and I feel like that's generally the one that people like the most. But are perhaps surveys are maybe like easier, or you want more surveys, or less surveys?
I think it depends a lot on what the feedback they're looking for is. Like, I like the mapping project because it helps us understand what the project is and where it's taking place, and it kind of contextualizes everything in along the Wasatch Front, and that has been really great just to learn more about. I think surveys and questionnaires would probably be more helpful for things that are not as detailed, like big picture ideas, like what's something that's important to you in this plan? What's something that's important to you about transportation? Like the really big picture stuff that might be a little bit harder to capture in a mapping exercise, but a lot of times for projects that for multiple projects, I feel like the mapping had been really useful to understand where it's happening and then provide information regarding like each little project on the map.
No, that's really great feedback. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything on that? So just what feedback formats you've enjoyed the most? If not, that's okay.
I like the mapping project with me being such a visual person. It's
And
easy.
have you guys found, for those of you that I know, I've facilitated one, and I think it was probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. But have you guys, for those of you that have been in the online ones, has that been okay? Do you think that could be better? Not been bad? Okay.
No, I feel like for what it's worth, the mapping online, based on like how it can be a little bit more difficult and actually being able to see what everyone was doing in the room, I think in person is always a little bit easier because you have the map there in front of you. But the presenter, I can't remember his name, he did a really good job about getting our feedback and zooming in and helping us really go through the map in a virtual space. So I think that's why we all enjoyed it. We felt like we could ask questions and ask for clarity and provide feedback even during that exercise. So I think I really liked it. And I am biased. I love surveys if they're not like super long or redundant. So I think surveys can also be helpful in case people want to provide, answer questions and maybe give space for like comments. So that way, if their responses maybe don't capture exactly what they're saying with a yes, no, or agree, disagree, they can give you some comments that way might be helpful as well. And a little more accessible for those maybe who had any trouble seeing activities, but they could hear it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think, and I do like surveys. Obviously the mapping exercises are really nice, but I'm glad to hear that they've been going well in person, and online, because I know online it can be difficult with mapping, just because you're not always in control of exactly where like something is going. Like, well, somebody might be putting it on there for you. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that. All right, do you guys have any new ideas for feedback opportunities? Is there something that you guys have participated in elsewhere that we're not doing, or that something that, I don't know, it could be anything outside of the box that is new? And I'm not sure what that would be, but
Is that for this group specifically or community outreach and engagement in general?
both. Yeah, so this is, and I apologize. This is,
No, you don't apologize.
this is for our CAC group, but also in ways where you guys can disseminate information to communities that you represent. So yeah, in both ways. And then also other ways that we can just do, let's say if we wanted to send an email or have a more public meeting that also is with our CAC members, so you guys, and insert different communities.
Brady, did you want to add anything?
Only that I just remembered an idea that I meant to add last time we were here to the map, but
well, you can definitely send that to me. I will put my email address in the chat here, because I would love to hear that idea.
My concern is that in general, that it's very easy for means like this to not reach the communities it means to serve because of just time and travel restraints. I wouldn't know how to address them because I think that's an internal problem, but
no, that's fair. It is hard to,
should be covered.
Yeah, it can be hard to get here, and obviously, asking you guys to, it's hard when you probably just got off of work, or are going to work later tonight or something like that. And it's hard to balance that time that you could be spent with your families or whatever. And so, yeah, that is a valid concern. I do appreciate that comment a lot. Well, if there isn't any thoughts on new feedback ideas, oh yeah, go ahead.
One thing I think, I don't know, it depends on the demographic you're trying to reach. But one thing I think that may be worth considering if you all have capacity as far as engaging the community is it still seems like based on the demographic, like certain demographic, Facebook is a really good spot. Others might be more Instagram. But I do know if there was a way for folks, and I'm guessing by knowing some of the work that you and your team do, it might work out really well if you were to actually create little reels or videos that explain a point a minute and a half or less or 3 minutes or less. I've heard pros and cons of it, but the community I work with, they'll click on those. And if we put them on our Facebook pages, like of community resources, if it's a link, they may click it, they may not. We try to find ways to engage them, but those the videos will actually, with really concise and clear messaging, might be really helpful to get a word out on if you're requesting feedback or if you're trying to share about new developments related to transportation. That might be a really great way to get people. And as people are sitting and waiting for transportation or in a meeting, they may just like click on those, and it could be a great way to reach folks. I don't know if I haven't seen you try it. I haven't seen those, so if you have, I apologize in advance. I might have missed it. Just a thought.
It is funny that you bring that up because I was talking with John A, which you guys met today, our new communications manager, and we were literally talking about reels and like on Instagram and Facebook, how they have the story highlights and having specific things to each group that's like each department that's in our office that could have some form of educational material. And so that is a fantastic idea, and I'm glad that you said it because now because that's what I was like, this is more engaging, and like UDOT has a lot of success on their social media platforms.
I was gonna say, like, the first thing I thought of to show when you started talking was the UDOT dog, and like, it's so cute. It's very engaging. It's like, I'm sure it takes a lot of work and planning and effort to make that happen, but I watched every single one, like from the beginning to the end, because I think it's really well done and cute. And I actually, Instagram is how I find out a lot about a lot of like different surveys and like feedback forms, like from the city, from UDOT. If there's a way to like consolidate all of those different things into like one account, I think that would be really helpful, just because there's so many different organizations and departments and accounts out there that like it's hard to follow them all and like get information from all of them. But I think having someplace that's dedicated to like just resharing or reposting the other organizations or groups would be really helpful. And I really like the link tree, or like when they link in the bio. I think it's really silly when they post a screenshot or like an image online and they're like, scan this QR code, and I'm on my phone and I'm like, I'm not gonna scan it when I'm looking at it on my phone. And so I think having that link readily accessible would be much more helpful than having someone copy and paste something in the caption that won't let you copy and
Fair. Yeah, no, how the conversation started with our communication manager today was with me bringing up that we should have Linktree, because yeah, it would consolidate a lot of different links. And all right, that's good. That's awesome. That's really good that you guys like that, because I feel like it's helpful, and there could be a way of, having, I don't know exactly how Linktree works in every facet, but having it where there's like perhaps one that is like with surveys or feedback opportunities or something like that, or like partner shares that we can highlight, and that you can click on the link in the bio, and it will take you to something.
Yeah, and you
similar to
can break it up into sections, which I think is really helpful. And on the back end, it gives you analytics, like you can see how many people clicked on that link, like the amount of kind of engagement information and data you collect from it, I think is pretty helpful too. Just on your guided like internal data review, collection, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm glad those are kinds of things because it is we're different. I'm 30, so me, grew up with the everything changing into being so digital. And so it's nice to see that like people are learning that way and using those platforms to learn. All right, did anybody else have anything on new ideas for feedback opportunities? Because I don't know how much time we have left, but I do, because I think we're doing this for probably until like 6:35, maybe 6:40, and I do want to get through some of these next ones because I think these are, so if nobody has anything else, I'll move on to the next one because I think this is an important question to ask, and I would ask that you guys be as candid as possible and as honest as possible because it only makes this better and makes us better. So do you feel like your feedback has been well received, and do you think that are there ways, I'm going to kind of pivot also with this question, but are there ways that we can show that your feedback is being used? Because it is a little bit hard with our plan, goes 30 years, right? And so sometimes you give us feedback and maybe it doesn't, I look at an east-west connection and maybe it doesn't get built until 2040, right? So it isn't immediate. So I can understand that part can be kind of hard, but in terms of, do you think it's well received? Basically, do you think we're listening to you guys and yeah, that part of it? So, and again, be honest. No reason not to be.
I think you did just that. I think that a lot of us, especially those of us who work in the community, a lot of the times when we have feedback or when we're getting feedback, folks are looking for an immediate resource or an immediate response. But I think just having that consistent language, like we hear you, and that's something that to us, your feedback is important, and we want you to know we hear you. These projects are, it's this time frame, like this is the time frame is a 30-year time frame. But what we would like to do is give you your feedback and see where we can place that in the timeline. And we just, and we appreciate your feedback and just know that we appreciate your patience in advance. And if you haven't seen it addressed, just remind us here and there, like just so that it's like when we acknowledge you provided the feedback, we respond. And it's not an excuse, it's a reality. Like these things take a long time. But if, we want you to continue to give us feedback and so that we can continue to, maybe if we keep hearing the same thing, we might be able to prioritize. Maybe instead of 2040, it could be 2038. Like, still long, but that will be here before we know it. So sometimes people just want to know they're heard. And I think you all are pretty good about that as well. And then just like, yeah, this is a project, your recommendations would probably be 5-10 years out. However, we've made sure that folks are aware of it and maybe even list some of those folks, this group is aware and this group is aware, or this planning committee. So, just so folks know, like their feedback matters.
Yeah,
No, that's great.
like Ken Garff's ad campaigns.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Emulates Ken Garff's "We Hear You" campaigns.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that because it is. I imagine that is a hard part of. I mean, it's even hard for us as planners to be looking at it and and when you're in school for this or whatever it is, so you're so used to immediate feedback or something immediately happening that you don't. I may not live in the state of Utah, or I may not see the impact that something that I've done has had. And so I can totally understand that. And I'm glad to hear that works. And I think giving the list of listing partners that we've interacted with and sharing your feedback with them is I think that can be a great step. And we do we do somewhat do that. I think a lot of our partners are here, like the main ones like UDOT, UTA. But sharing that with the cities is and counties, I think, can be, and maybe we can get some more interaction in that regard. So
Yeah, I agree. I think having this opportunity to provide feedback often is really great, especially when we're thinking that far long term and it's like hard to see things come to fruition. And like realistically, I know that my feedback might not sway a lot of the politics that happens behind doors of other agencies, other organizations, and all of that. But even, for example, like with the UDOT I-15 environmental impact study, like I provided feedback, I provided comments, and like it, even if what I wanted to see didn't happen in the end, I did like that they kept us updated with like, here's where we are in the process. Like this is phase one. Now we're doing a draft. Now we're having more comments again. And like, here's our final report. I think getting those updates about where they're at in the project and the process really helps break it down a little bit more instead of thinking like, oh, this project isn't going to happen for another 50 years. I'm not going to see that until, I don't know, I have my grandchildren have grandchildren or something. But breaking it down into more relatively soon timeline, I think is really helpful, or just being like, here's where we at. Where like we have this draft and then like we are 10 years out from the final project, but like this is the point where you can provide feedback. And then our next step, like following through on where you are at in the process and like in that timeline, I think is just, it helps make it more tangible and helps us feel like we're more a part of the process than providing feedback once and then like never hearing again from anyone for 30 years.
So with that, I'm because I totally hear and understand what you're saying, and I think for us, perhaps a way forward in that regard would be, we kind of like with this with the mapping exercise feedback, because I don't know, I'm trying to think back, and I've only been doing the CAC for a year, and so trying to think back on like times where we've given feedback on your feedback, and I don't know if there was too many, but so that kind of thing was helpful to basically to be like, we heard this and we're using it in this direction, and then perhaps when we get done with this, like Lauren was saying, in December, we can come and say, hey, like here is where the next steps and like where we're kind of narrowing down to, and get more feedback on that. Okay, that's good to know. Do you guys have any ideas for increasing participation and feedback and overall involvement in the CAC? And I guess it's kind of hard because not all communities can be in this, and it's not obviously not a very large group as much as I think we wish it could be like a public forum of sorts. But is there ways that we can make it so that you guys feel, I don't know, like it's not that it's hard to give feedback, but you know what I mean? Just getting more involvement. And yeah.
Now, something that would have helped me to attend today is if you sent like a calendar link, like you sent the date, but I don't think you actually sent a link that would put it in my calendar.
Okay, that is good to know. That is a good point. Because we use Google, and I don't know how that exactly interfaces with everyone's calendar, like if that can go into like an Apple Calendar or something like that. But I'll note that, and we can look into that, because yeah, that's fair. Would it
From
be
Outlook, I can see it in my calendar.
okay? So it might just be something we can figure out and work on that. Okay.
I think one thing we could possibly do is, I think one thing I feel is helpful, and I guess it depends on every community group, is just challenge those of us who are here to either, represent or to try to um, give information back to our community, is just that challenge of, when you leave today, please share at least one thing or two things you learned from today's meeting with your community. And the next time we meet, give everyone a moment to do a share out and let them, and say, so that way everyone, and it depends on time, of course, or this could be via email. But I think a lot of us, it's something, I think we all like like not competitive, but like, hey, one of the things we challenge you all today or to do, or homework for today. I teach school, so I'm like using the word homework, but adults, something less scary. But an ask we have, or a challenge we have for you, is to take one thing you learned today back to your community and come back, and please come back with us with a 1 to 2 sentence response, or an ask, or a question that we can address that maybe it wasn't clear to those you serve. Something like that,
Give us
because
thumbs.
it makes people have it's action oriented.
Yeah, that I really I like that, and I like especially the last part where you said if it wasn't clear to who you were giving it to, because if it isn't, then that's something that like we as a group, and part of this is that, right, is figuring out better ways to do that.
Yeah, I think I don't know how this would work logistically. Like, I know it would be a huge nightmare, but opening up like one of our meetings, I think, for us to invite people, and then instead of you guys facilitating the process, we could facilitate for like our own little groups. And then that way they are in a space where they feel like they are providing like really good feedback and really learning about the process, but then they're kind of having that discussion with someone who's familiar to them in and like helping them maybe feel more open in sharing feedback and ideas. And then like how could we then take it back to like the greater group as like a CAC, where people can kind of like, oh, like I reported to this person, and then they were able to share out with the larger CAC and with FRAC, like that's what this committee does, and like how I can provide more feedback to this one person who led my table today or something.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. And I think that is something that we have discussed, and how we could, and I don't know all exactly how it would work or what the details would be, but and it might be a separate meeting that's outside of our normal every other month meeting
And I
schedule.
think that would rely on us to like get the message out to our groups and be like, hey, like I'm leading this thing with WFRC, like come by, like share your information. Like I'd love to get your feedback and ideas on whatever else like you guys want us to participate on. So I think there is a little bit more of heavy lifting on our end. Like we would have to work with you guys to make sure we know like what we're presenting, what feedback we're looking for. And then we would share that out with our community and like really make that huge push for them to come to that day, like feedback tabling session, whatever. But I think it would definitely be I think it would be really cool to see, and like I personally would not mind doing that, and rallying people and kind of preparing for sharing their feedback and like taking their feedback and leading discussions and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And especially, again, I was talking with the communications manager, John A, about this, was not a lot of people know who we are or what we do. And that goes from all sorts of different communities, or to all different kinds of communities. And so, yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. And we've had kind of talks about that. So I mean, I'm writing everything you guys are saying down, but I think that that's something that Lauren and I can talk about and figure out a good way to do that. Because I do think it's important to get more general public in here, because most of the time when we see general public come to like our staff meetings or something like that, it is generally somebody who knows who we are and is presenting a public comment that is about something relating to the meeting. Like a lot of we pretty much have somebody from Rio Grande Plan come like every time and present that, which is really good because they're representing a community. But it would be nice to kind of have like a broader outreach and be like, hey, this is an organization and they do public meetings, and yeah, have some sort of information sharing.
And at my community meetings, I'm given like 5 minutes as the meeting starts to share with the group as to what we're doing with
it's real quick or real short. You don't have a lot of time to basically like rattle off loads.
Right.
So maybe
but it's
getting condensed, like somehow figuring out a condensed way of, I don't know, or condensing our information down so that it is easier to share a little bit.
Yeah, and if you all have capacity, I know that there's different groups represented here and probably even in the space there in person that we would love. I don't know, our group loves guest speakers. Maybe we just hear each other all the time, but if once a year, if you or your team had capacity to come and join our meet people where they are and just talk about who you are and what you do, it doesn't have to be super complex or involved, but that might be helpful too. So it also shows, okay, this group is also willing to meet us where we're at. And I think it actually could be a really cool practice to kind of see like the path, like the sort of, I don't know, if we're thinking about transportation, what it might, the construction on the way to where people are meeting, or I don't know, it could be like 2 for 1. So
fair.
if you all have capacity, I know there's certain groups who'd love to have you, and if in advance we can always schedule with you and say, hey, we meet hybrid or we meet in person. If someone from your team would like to come and present, and we can make, some folks, it could be 5 minutes like Miss Carolyn said, or it could be like we have 30 minutes allotted for you with questions. Like let us know what the capacity is, and again, it could just be once a year. It doesn't have to be too often, because I know you all have a lot on your plate, but folks also, it would mean a lot for some of the communities to actually see who you all are versus having them come to this. That might work for some, but if there's already an established meeting elsewhere, it might be easier just to meet people where they are at.
Yeah, fair. That's a great point to make. Yeah, I totally understand and agree with that. All right. Let's see. Moving on just for sake of time, because I don't want to. We have 3 questions left. So what, and this kind of goes into what we were talking about a bit throughout this, but what barriers do you guys think that there are for getting feedback from our CAC members to transportation partners and staff in the various projects we work on? So getting that information and feedback that you guys give, and then getting it out to like UTA, UDOT, and cities and communities, and I guess vice versa as well. Like if there's certain barriers that you can think of, and again, you might be like, oh, I don't know, there's not many because we have so many ways of doing outreach, but yeah. And if there's nothing, that's okay, because I think, but maybe there's one way we could think of it is where there's missing links, I guess, in terms of, we give you information such as there's so much of it and it's technically somewhat difficult to relay to somebody who knows nothing about planning, which you guys, at this point have a wide breadth of knowledge on it, but is, not everyone in your community would know. So that could be a barrier on getting that. Or a barrier in the reverse would be, thank you for that, Stephen, I appreciate it. A barrier for us getting information out might be, we don't necessarily do that type of work, right? And so it's hard for us to relay that when we're not like a landowning organization.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Yeah, go ahead, Brady.
Something that might help people come is if they can understand the importance or impact that the Wasatch front. And I forget the rest of the title, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Importance and impact. Okay.
Also just your
Yeah.
existence in general.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else on that note? Because I think we only have like a couple minutes left. If there's not, that's okay. So I'll kind of do these two questions together. One of them is, who do you think the transportation partners are not reaching? And how can we best support sharing information with your communities to reach communities that we're not reaching? And even if they're ones that we are, but reaching them better. I know we sort of talked about this already with like condensing information, one pager, key takeaways, etc. But if there's anything while we've been in here that has popped into your mind. Yeah.
If there can just be, I know there's a representative, and I think many of us work with refugees in one way or another, but I think that's a population that continues to grow. And with that, a lot of times they're, you know, some programs give them vouchers, others don't. They're just told, hey, these services, transportation services exist, but they don't even, like, that's kind of where it's at. Like, here's a voucher, figure it out. So maybe working with folks from the IRC or Department of Workforce Services or other individuals to create quick how-tos, even just how to use these sort of services. If they're given a bus pass, how does it work? If they're given a pass to go to UTA tracks, how does it work? Sometimes they're given that information and sometimes they're not. And not everyone's connected to those resources, but I think that would be, I don't even know if that's in your realm, but I think it could be.
Yeah, that would be like that's a really good point for us to give to, like, we'll share this with the UTA. Megan from UTA, the community engagement gal, this is something that we would share with her. So that is something in our realm. And that's a good point, because I know we do things, we can share things in like Spanish, etc. And is it easier, or I guess, should there be more? One of the feedback comments from the June mapping exercise was sharing items in more languages. And so that would be a good, okay, I'll note that down too, because I feel like that's an important one. And I don't know how that works as well, because we don't have everyone that speaks so many different languages. But even maybe perhaps contacting somebody in a community and seeing if they're able to translate into a way that is, yeah.
The health department has a database of at least 32, if not more, languages. So just leveraging the sort of resources that exist could be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked a lot about social media,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's like a huge group that we aren't reaching, or people who aren't on social media, or like don't really use technology that often. And so I don't know what it would look like flyering, getting a city to send out something. Like, I get a lot of, I think from Salt Lake City Public Lands, I will get like a little graphic information from them whenever they have a new survey. And they're like, hey, we have this survey, we want your feedback, like, provide it here. And a lot of it is just online. I don't know what it would be like to do like a paper mail-in version, or like call this person, maybe something that expands beyond just technology and internet access, because not everyone had great or reliable access to that. I've also noticed, like, when I go on walks, sometimes I'll see little yard signs like posted on the curb where it's like, take this survey, like, share your feedback here, we're talking about this building. And so that had kind of made me a little bit more aware of my own community happenings. I think it is definitely more time, but like doing more like on the ground stuff, flyering, putting up little signs on like curbs, stuff like that is a really good way to get people who aren't on social media, not really using technology, like don't have internet access, whatever other limitation there might be surrounding that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a great point because I think that that is definitely a barrier. So that's a wonderful comment. Do you guys have any thoughts on how we can best support you in sharing information with your community? Obviously, again, like the one pagers and getting items to you that are in an easy digestible format. But is there any other items that you can think of? Can we provide templates on, and maybe it's um just a way, like a updated list that we share with you guys of stuff that is like ongoing, and therefore that can be, something along those lines.
Maybe if you are looking for feedback from a specific demographic, encourage those with connections to said demographic to host pre-meetings to gauge, be a representative for said group.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, and that is a good thing that we're in the process of reviewing, is seeing kind of where we have gaps in representation, because I could be wrong here, but there are specific things that we have that are federally mandated that we have to do, right? And this is like an extra item that we do, but there are like specific communities that we do have to do outreach to. And maybe a future topic could be figuring out, where taking account of like, hey, these are all the communities that we represent, and what do you guys think could, what are other areas, or whether that's like population wise or income wise, or different sets of like disabilities, and stuff like that. So that's a really good point to bring up. Thank you for that, Brady. Appreciate it. All right, I think we're still chatting in there. So we might have, do you guys have any other, we do have like 10 minutes left, so we'll probably meet back up in a second, but do you guys have any other like parting thoughts that yeah.
I feel like I probably shared this before, but a lot of the people I interact with who use transportation services are, again, either are a lot of folks who refugee status or students. And so maybe just if you all send the information you send us to each school's marketing and communications people, they'll usually find a way to fit that in because it's relevant to what they do. And so maybe that might be a way to reach more people as well, from the diverse backgrounds. You can let them know you'd like this sent to faculty, staff, and students if able. And that could be the one pager, or that could be something more, or even just your newsletter. But I think that's a great way to reach a large body of people too.
Okay. Yeah, and we do send, so one of our deputy executive director is a teacher at U of U. And so I
Nice.
know like we do have like upcoming stakeholder meetings. Some of those are, I think we have them with all of the colleges coming up. I could be wrong, but so we do some of that, and I do think the refugee population one is probably a big one that would be good, especially because I would imagine that it probably makes you feel welcome to be like, hey, we would like to involve you in our community and future of this. So, all right. Well, I think nobody has anything else. I think we're probably getting back together in a second here. So I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for being really talkative. I know it can be difficult online and everything like that. But I feel like we got a lot of really good information. It took my half-page document to 3 pages. So hopefully next time when we meet up, we can bring you guys some information on what we're doing about this, and because we're trying to not reshape, but center the focus on this into making it more of an opportunity of feedback coming to us and being usable, so that, I mean, you guys should feel validated and spending your time and talking to us and yeah, everything like that. So, all right, looks like Lauren is calling us back together. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys. And I will see you back in there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for doing that breakout session with us. We're just going to wrap up in the last little bit. Just really quickly, if there were any main highlights that people wanted to touch on, some good ideas that maybe they discussed during this breakout session. And if there's anyone online, go ahead and unmute and raise your hand, or anyone in the room want to share any insights?
So one of the things that we talked about online for feedback formats that was really good was that the mapping exercises were really good. And one of the things that I think that was important and that I asked specifically to the online group was that if the online format has basically been done well. And one of the comments in there was that those that have presented online in those breakout sessions have done a really good job at making sure that those online are heard and that they can basically explore it to the best of their ability. And one of them was about Jory, who did a really good job at zooming in on all the maps and making it really easy for the people online to understand and explaining things really well. And another feedback portion that I thought was really important was different ways of sharing information with communities. And it was basically looking at who we're sharing our information with, and then how we're sharing that information, and making it basically bite-sized and understandable, and so that it can be utilized by kind of a more general population to understand like who we are, what we do, and that we exist as different transportation agencies.
Great. Any other thoughts or?
I'll share one from our table if that's all right. And Andrew had a really good observation that would be good to create space so that CAC members can have more conversations amongst themselves and they're driving the conversation as opposed to some of the agency staff. And so I think that's something that we can look into and try and facilitate more.
Great, thanks. Okay, so just as a note, we'll be sending out these questions so that anyone who wasn't able to join can provide feedback. But also, if you have any other additional thoughts that you think of, come to mind tonight, you're laying awake and you're thinking about this committee and you just have to share something that you didn't share, please email us. So we'll share this so that you have additional opportunities for feedback. But thank you for participating in this. This is super helpful. This helps us shape this committee and how we present information and our responsibility to you. And then it will also, while you're all very important to me, we also need to reach further. So this helps us kind of figure out how we share information to the broader masses and make sure that it's helpful and digestible and things like that. So we really, really appreciate your help in this conversation. So moving on to the last little bit,
Lauren,
oh yeah.
A couple of things maybe from our group back here. We thought as like an advisory committee, maybe like providing a year-end report that we can provide to our council or to UDOT or UTA, saying like, we've had this much outreach to this many people, or we've, here's survey results, things like that. And even scripted or detailed information that can be shared more easily or forwarded along. even written out emails that can be shared that like, for our members, they don't have to write out the whole thing themselves and share it, that if we can provide more of that information. We did talk about more fun and interactive. And we got on a little bit of we had a little extra time. So we poked around UDOT's Instagram page. If you have not looked at that, it's super fun and quirky, and like, they're just making transportation and what they do fun, right? And how can we do that a little bit more? And then last was maybe like recognition of our members to the cities that they're representing or that they're within. Maybe we can do it like a WFRC certificate or something to like the city council, which is like twofold. One, it recognizes our members, and two, puts a more of a spotlight on this committee as like, this committee's here to help. And if you are doing a project or, will want to stay in tune with what's going on. And so that could maybe help bring items to us as well as recognize our members. So those are some of the things we talked about.
Yeah, those were all really great ideas. I love that last one. And we also heard in our discussions about having kind of highlighted, like when we send out information and resources, if we can better highlight what we would like for you all to share, and then also provide some text or information to include. You all can modify as you see fit, as it's relevant to your organizations or communities, but with us kind of providing the bulk of that detail, I think is super helpful. So yeah, we'll get together, review all of this, provide you an update of whatever changes or things like that happen. But yeah, moving on to our next bit, we just have open announcements. So if anyone has anything going on, now's the time. Upcoming events, projects, musings.
We're going to send a link out, but Jeremy and I were talking, some of you may be familiar with our customer experience action plan that we're putting together at UTA. We are in the community prioritization phase, and so there is a link on our website, but we will send that out to Lauren to get to the group, and we'd love to hear what you would prioritize. We had about over 100 ideas basically that came from the engagement on the customer experience improvements that people would like to see on the transit system, and are trying to funnel that into a smaller list that we can take action on.
Lauren, to follow up on your follow-up of the first item of our mapping exercise, we're going out collectively this fall, or starting tomorrow, meeting with local communities, with UDOT and UTA, and we'll have a pretty usable, user-friendly, interactive map. So, as Lauren went through the list of Lauren and Che went through the list of road transit active transportation projects. Lauren, we could send out the link to the interactive map, and we're always open to collecting ideas of transportation or even, land use areas across the region.
Thanks. And it looks like there was an online comment from Sandra. Said the Wasatch Trails Collective, a group of runners of color, are hosting a Dia de los Muertos 5K walk run, and it's on Saturday, November 2nd. So we will also share that out with our follow-up email. Any other events? Okay. Oh, Kendall.
I was just curious, when's the next meeting, CAC meeting that we got coming up? Or do we have that planned out?
I believe it's in December, but we will share that in the follow-up email, the exact date. Yes, so look for that follow-up email. I'll have some good info. Okay, then that's all. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.